Have you ever woken up to find your entire reality has changed? Have you ever looked in the mirror and seen a complete stranger staring back? What would you do if your identity was suddenly replaced with someone else's life, someone else's body? For Damian Clark, a 23-year-old personal trainer whose life revolved around iron, protein, and the rhythmic grunt of exertion, such a question would have been a philosophical exercise, a hypothetical flight of fancy. He was a creature of routine, a devotee of the physical, his identity forged in the crucible of countless gym sessions. His body was his temple, a testament to years of disciplined sculpting, a fortress of muscle and sinew he inhabited with absolute certainty. Or so he thought. The night before the world tilted on its axis was unremarkable in its familiarity. Damian had closed up Ironclad Fitness, the no-frills gym where he was a lead trainer, the scent of sweat and liniment a comforting balm. He'd cycled home on his fixed-gear bike through the humming, neon-lit streets of the city, the cool night air a welcome contrast to the heated intensity of his workday. His studio apartment, a bachelor's sanctuary of minimalist design and maximum efficiency, welcomed him with its familiar scent of sports deodorant and the faint, ever-present dust of pre-workout powder. He'd blended his post-workout protein shake, a precisely measured concoction of whey, creatine, and banana, and downed it with practiced efficiency. Exhausted from a double shift, his muscles pleasantly fatigued, he had crashed into bed, his dreams likely filled with new personal bests and client progress charts. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would explain the cataclysmic shift that awaited him. The alarm, when it sounded, was the first discordant note in a symphony of the unfamiliar. It wasn't the insistent, electronic chirp of his smartphone, but a gentle, melodic chime that seemed to float through a room far too expansive to be his own. Before even opening his eyes, a primal sense of wrongness prickled at the edges of his consciousness. The bed felt alien, too soft, yielding beneath him like a cloud, the sheets against his skin impossibly silky, a stark contrast to the utilitarian cotton of his own bed. The air, too, was foreign. Instead of the familiar olfactory tapestry of his studio, a blend of male grooming products and the ghost of gym sweat, he was enveloped in a delicate, almost cloying fragrance of vanilla and jasmine, a scent utterly unlike anything he'd ever knowingly encountered. His eyes, when they finally fluttered open, confirmed the unsettling premonition. He found himself not in his familiar, compact studio, but in a bedroom of astonishing opulence. A king-size bed, far too large for a solitary occupant, was adorned with designer linens in muted tones. Sunlight, surprisingly bright for what felt like an early hour, streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, revealing a breathtaking city view, a panorama of gleaming skyscrapers and distant bridges that definitively did not belong to his fifth-floor walk-up. The walls, painted a soft cream, were punctuated by pieces of abstract modern art, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to his own apartment's bare, functional walls. "What the hell?" he muttered, the words escaping him on a breath of bewildered panic. Then he froze. The voice that issued from his throat was not his own. It was higher, softer, imbued with a distinctly feminine timbre that vibrated strangely in his ears. He sat up abruptly, his mind racing, trying to reconcile the auditory anomaly with the visual evidence of his surroundings. And that's when he felt it, a strange, unfamiliar weight on his chest, shifting subtly with his movement, a disconcerting malleability where once there had been solid, unyielding pectorals. Looking down, his gaze fixed on two unmistakable, undeniable breasts, pushing gently against the silky fabric of what appeared to be a camisole top. A wave of nausea, cold and visceral, washed over him. "No, no way," he whispered, the strange, feminine voice barely audible even to himself. His hands, small, delicate, adorned with perfectly manicured nails, nails he most certainly had never possessed, shot up to his chest, trembling as they made contact with the impossible reality. He felt them, soft yet firm, undeniably real, attached to him. These breasts were his now. He scrambled out of bed, his legs, surprisingly slender and graceful, carrying him unsteadily across the plush carpet. He searched frantically for a mirror, his heart hammering against his new ribs. The bedroom opened into a spacious, marble-clad bathroom, and there, on the back of the door, was a full-length mirror. The person reflected back was a complete stranger. A young woman. Long, light-colored hair, perhaps blonde or a very light brown, cascaded over delicate shoulders. Her features were finely sculpted, a small nose, full lips, large, expressive eyes that currently held a wild, terrified disbelief. Her petite frame, dressed in nothing but the silky camisole and a pair of lace-trimmed boy shorts, possessed a softness and curve that was utterly alien to his memory. "This isn't happening," he whispered, watching in horror as the beautiful stranger's lips moved with his words, mirroring his every syllable. He raised his hand, she raised hers. He touched his face, tracing the unfamiliar contours of her cheekbone, and her reflection did the same. The cold, unyielding truth solidified in his mind, shattering his reality into a million shards. This was him now. The rational part of his brain, a tiny, struggling ember amidst the raging inferno of panic, suggested he was dreaming. A vivid, terrifying nightmare from which he would soon wake, drenched in sweat but whole. He pinched himself hard, digging his delicate nails into the soft flesh of his arm. A sharp, undeniable wince of pain. Not a dream. He stumbled to the oversized marble sink, splashing cold water, icy cold, onto his face, desperate to shock himself back to his former self. The droplets beaded on unfamiliar skin, but the reflection remained. Still here. Still a female. The initial, overwhelming shock eventually subsided, enough for a sliver of clarity to pierce through the mental fog. He began to examine his new body more carefully, his mind, the mind of a trainer, instinctively cataloging and assessing. He was significantly smaller, every dimension reduced, save for two obvious, undeniable ones. His muscles, the ones he'd spent countless hours building, the biceps that bulged, the triceps that carved, the steel-hard core, they were gone. Replaced with soft, smooth skin and gentle, flowing curves. Where a six-pack had once defined his abdomen, there was now a flat stomach, subtly curved, undeniably feminine. His arms, once veined and defined by striations, were now slender, delicate, almost fragile in their grace. He turned to see his profile, still unable to fully believe the image confronting him. The stranger in the mirror, his reflection, turned with him, mimicking his movements with unnerving precision. He corrected himself, the pronoun felt foreign, yet true. He was objectively beautiful, possessing the kind of proportions that graced magazine covers. High cheekbones, a graceful neck, a waist that cinched elegantly before flaring into gentle hips. But this wasn't a magazine. This was him. Somehow, impossibly, incomprehensibly, he needed to figure out who this woman was, and, more urgently, how this impossible, reality-bending transmogrification had occurred. The bedroom and bathroom, with their high-end finishes and impeccable design, screamed wealth. Everything, from the polished chrome fixtures to the bespoke furniture, radiated an aura of expensive taste and effortless luxury. His eyes scanned the room, searching for clues, for any scrap of information that could anchor him in this bewildering new existence. On the nightstand, beside the king-sized bed, a sleek smartphone charged silently. He picked it up, his small, delicate fingers surprisingly deft around the unfamiliar device. To his astonishment, it unlocked with his fingerprint. Well, her fingerprint. His fingerprint now. The phone's background image was a photo of the woman, him, on a sprawling yacht, a champagne glass raised in a toast, surrounded by a constellation of other beautiful, laughing people. A life of effortless glamour, alien to his own disciplined existence. He opened the Photos app, his thumb scrolling through a dizzying montage of a life he couldn't recognize, desperately trying to piece together the identity of the person he had become. The images painted a vivid picture of luxury and leisure. Tropical vacations on private beaches, where the sand was impossibly white and the ocean a dazzling turquoise. Exclusive parties held in penthouse apartments with sweeping city views, or sprawling estates surrounded by manicured gardens. Shopping trips to designer boutiques, where bags emblazoned with famous logos were carried with casual ease. The woman, him, appeared in all of them. Always perfectly dressed, exquisitely coiffed, her smile radiant, always at the center of attention, radiating an effortless charm and confidence. Next, he navigated to the social media apps, a digital window into this new persona. According to Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, he was now Fiona Reynolds, 21 years old, and, seemingly, independently wealthy. Fiona boasted thousands of followers across all platforms, a digital congregation who seemed to idolize her lifestyle of unbridled leisure and luxury. Comments on her posts ranged from fawning admiration to barely concealed envy, laced with flirtatious remarks from both men and women, hinting at a vibrant, uninhibited social life. He dug deeper, seeking any hint of a professional life, a career, a purpose beyond endless indulgence. He checked emails and calendar appointments. There was no job he could discern. No work-related emails, no scheduled meetings, nothing that suggested any kind of professional endeavor. How did he make money? The answer, startling in its simplicity and enormity, came when he found a banking app. After it, too, unlocked with her fingerprint, he stared in disbelief at the account balance. 7 figures. Casually sitting there, earning interest, a staggering sum that dwarfed his entire life's savings. Additional folders contained investment portfolios and property management statements, hinting at a vast, diversified financial empire. Fiona Reynolds was rich. Very, very rich. A desperate hope flickered within him. Could this be some elaborate prank? A scientific experiment gone awry? He tried searching online for terms like body swapping, possession, or unexplained transmogrification, but found nothing useful beyond the realms of science fiction and outlandish conspiracy theories. He tried Googling his real name, Damian Clark, but found only his professional social media accounts, photos of him, strong and smiling in gym gear, and his modest professional website. No reports of mysterious disappearances, no unexplained comas. It was as if no one had noticed he was gone. A chilling thought struck him, like a shard of ice in his gut. What if someone else was in his body? What if, while he was here, inhabiting Fiona's luxurious life, someone, perhaps Fiona herself, was living his? The idea was both terrifying and infuriating. He tried calling his own number, the one he'd memorized since childhood. It rang once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. He sent a text message, short and blunt. "Who is this?" No response. The silence on the other end felt like a confirmation of his worst fears. He needed to see all of this new body, to understand the full extent of what had happened, to confront the complete, undeniable truth. With a shaky breath, he removed the silky camisole, letting it fall silently to the plush carpet. His new breasts, perfectly proportioned to his frame, were not excessively large, but undeniably noticeable. They were firm, yet possessed a natural, yielding softness when he cautiously touched them, the skin incredibly soft beneath his delicate fingertips. The tiny muscle tension markers at their center stiffened almost imperceptibly as the cooler air of the bathroom hit them. The sensation of his own hands on them was utterly bizarre, a disconcerting duality. He could feel both the touch and the sensation of being touched, an unsettling feedback loop of self-awareness. With another deep, trembling breath, he slid off the lace-trimmed boy shorts, leaving himself utterly, completely naked before the full-length mirror. The absence between his legs was perhaps the most shocking change of all. Where his male equipment had been, the familiar, undeniable proof of his masculinity, there was now only smooth, feminine anatomy, a landscape he had only ever seen in photos and videos, a world he had only ever observed from a distance. He was completely female, down to the last, intricate detail. "I'm a woman," he said aloud, testing the words, feeling them vibrate in his new, softer voice. "I'm Fiona Reynolds." The words felt heavy, yet strangely liberating, an acknowledgement of an undeniable, if utterly bewildering, truth, the immediate, overwhelming need to clear his head, to somehow wash away the impossible reality of the past hour. compelled him towards the shower. Fiona's bathroom, a sanctuary of marble and glass, was a testament to luxurious living. Marble countertops gleamed under recessed lighting. A seamless glass enclosure housed a rainfall showerhead the size of a dinner plate, and a deep soaking tub sat invitingly in a corner, promising hours of scented relaxation. He turned on the shower, the rush of warm water a momentary distraction, and stepped in, immediately confronting a new, utterly intimate challenge: washing this unfamiliar body. The sensations were completely different. Water, cascading from above, ran over breasts and hips, creating rivulets that traced unfamiliar contours, a feeling utterly unlike the straightforward, angular planes of his old body. Shampoo bottles and an array of other gleaming containers lined a built-in shelf, and he realized with a jolt that he had no idea which products to use, or even in what order. His former shower routine had been a Spartan affair, a single 3-in-1 bottle that served as soap, shampoo, and conditioner, efficiently applied and rinsed. Here, the sheer variety was daunting. He picked what looked like a body wash, an elegant, frosted glass bottle that exuded a floral scent even unopened, and began to clean himself, moving cautiously, almost tentatively, over the unfamiliar curves and hollows of his new form. The shower itself was an experience in luxury. Beyond the rainfall head, multiple smaller jets offered a therapeutic massage, the water pressure perfect, the heated floors beneath his feet a silent indulgence. No wonder Fiona's skin was so flawless, he mused, a flicker of ironic appreciation piercing through his continued bewilderment. She probably spent a fortune on her shower products alone. The body wash, when he finally applied it, smelled like expensive flowers, a delicate, complex fragrance far removed from the bracing, masculine sense of his previous life. Washing his chest was a strange, almost clinical act of self-discovery. The sensitivity of his new breasts was surprising, a jolt of unexpected pleasure radiating outwards when his hands passed over the nodes. The tiny, hardened points at the center stiffened further under the warm water and the gentle friction of his touch. A wave of unfamiliar sensation, both startling and undeniably pleasant, made him pause. That was different. Very different. Washing down there was even more confusing, a journey into uncharted, highly sensitive territory. The unfamiliar geography, the soft folds and delicate structures, combined with an unexpected, almost shocking sensitivity, made him gasp at the lightest touch. It was a completely alien landscape, a new world of sensation he was utterly unprepared for. He finished showering quickly, not ready to delve deeper into those particular sensations, the intensity of which was both overwhelming and strangely alluring. After the shower, he instinctively reached for a towel, wrapping it around his chest rather than his waist. The motion, though he had never performed it before, felt strangely natural, a nascent instinct for the feminine emerging. He wiped the steam from the mirror and stared at his reflection again. Wet hair clung to his face, water droplets glistened on flushed skin, and his eyes, still wide with a lingering shock, also held a nascent curiosity. He found a hairdryer in one of the vanity drawers, a sleek, ergonomically designed device, and attempted to dry his new, much longer hair. It was an awkward, almost comical process. Holding the dryer with one hand while trying to manage the long, slippery strands with the other proved far more challenging than he anticipated. His former routine had involved a quick towel dry and a comb-through of his short, functional cut. By the time he finished, his arms ached from the unaccustomed effort, and the result was a far cry from the sleek, perfectly styled looks he'd seen in Fiona's photos. Still, it was dry, which, for now, seemed like a reasonable accomplishment. Next came skincare, another totally foreign concept to him. Fiona's bathroom counter was an altar to beauty, holding dozens of products in elegant bottles, crystal jars, and slender tubes. Cleansers, toners, serums, eye creams, day creams, night creams, moisturizers, a bewildering array. He had no idea what order to use them in, or even what half of them were supposed to do. After some hesitation, he picked what looked like a basic moisturizer, a light, unscented cream, and tentatively applied it to his face and neck, surprised by how quickly and completely it absorbed into his skin, leaving it feeling soft and supple. Now came another, equally daunting challenge: what to wear. He opened what he assumed was Fiona's closet and was momentarily stunned. It was less a closet and more a meticulously curated boutique, a cavernous space larger than his entire studio apartment had been. Sections were organized by clothing type and color, each garment hanging perfectly on specialized velvet hangers. Designer labels he recognized only from advertisements: Prada, Gucci, Chanel, Versace, hung neatly, their fabrics whispering promises of luxury. Shoes. Dozens of pairs lined one entire wall, arranged from casual flats and sneakers to towering stilettos and elegant boots. The sheer volume and expense of it all was overwhelming. Most of the clothes, he noted with a growing sense of trepidation, were far more revealing than anything he would have ever chosen for himself. Short skirts, tight dresses, low-cut tops, blouses made of sheer, delicate fabrics. His former wardrobe had consisted primarily of gym shorts, t-shirts, comfortable jeans, and a few basic button-downs. He eventually found what seemed like workout clothes, a sports singlet and a pair of form-fitting leggings, tucked away in a smaller section. He managed to put them on after some struggling with the unfamiliar clasps and fastenings. The sports bra was particularly challenging. His male anatomy had never required such an intricate contraption. After several failed attempts to secure it properly, fumbling with the hooks and eyes behind his back, he finally managed to get it on. The compression around his chest was strange, a constricting sensation he was unaccustomed to, but not uncomfortable. The leggings were easier, though the sensation of the tight, stretchy fabric hugging his new curves, outlining his buttocks and thighs, was bizarrely intimate. Looking at himself in the full-length mirror again, now fully clothed in Fiona's workout attire, he could see how the outfit hugged his new body, accentuating its curves and lines. Despite the utterly surreal and terrifying circumstances, he couldn't help but appreciate the aesthetics of this body. It was objectively beautiful, a work of art, even if it wasn't his. The leggings showed off surprisingly toned legs, and the singlet highlighted the slender, graceful line of his shoulders and back. He looked good. He looked like Fiona Reynolds, a woman who cared about her appearance, even when working out. This thought, more than anything, brought home the profound, inescapable reality of his situation. His old life, his old body, seemed to recede further and further with each new discovery about Fiona. Over the next few days, a strange, almost dissociative calm settled over Damian, or rather Fiona. The initial terror had receded, replaced by a deep-seated bewilderment and an insistent, almost scientific, drive to explore and understand. He meticulously explored Fiona's apartment, an act of both necessity and morbid curiosity. The place was immaculate, not a speck of dust, not a misplaced item, clearly maintained by professional staff. It was also unequivocally expensive, every detail screaming high-end luxury. The kitchen, a marvel of sleek design, looked barely used. Top-of-the-line stainless steel appliances, a Sub-Zero refrigerator, a Viking range, a Miele dishwasher, gleamed like new, pristine, and untouched. The pantry was stocked with gourmet ingredients and organic staples, yet there was no evidence of actual cooking, no lingering sense of home-cooked meals. It suggested a life of dining out or ordering in, a stark contrast to Damian's own habit of meal prepping his bland, high-protein sustenance. The living room was an expansive space dominated by a massive, wall-mounted entertainment system and a collection of modern artwork that probably cost more than a year of Damian's former salary. Plush, designer furniture arranged for conversation and relaxation offered glimpses of the city's skyline through vast windows. There was a sense of curated perfection, of comfort engineered for display rather than lived in warmth. A home office, surprisingly understated compared to the rest of the apartment, contained a sleek desktop computer, several external monitors, and a set of elegant filing cabinets. It was in these cabinets that Damian finally uncovered the true source of Fiona's seemingly endless wealth. Folder after folder contained trust fund statements, meticulously detailed investment portfolios, and property ownership documents, deeds for various luxury properties, not just this penthouse, but also a beach house, a mountain retreat, and several rental units. Fiona Reynolds was, as he suspected, the only child of deceased wealthy parents, living off a vast inheritance and investments that generated more money monthly than Damian had made in a year as a personal trainer. It was a golden cage, undeniably, but one crafted with exquisite precision. Beyond the financial disclosures, the documents also painted a picture of Fiona's personal life, or lack thereof. There were no joint accounts, no marriage certificates, no shared property with a partner. Fiona lived alone. While there were many contacts in her phone and a bustling social media presence, the deeper he delved into her digital life, the clearer it became that she had a wide circle of acquaintances but few, if any, truly close friends. This was both good and bad, he realized. Good, because it meant no one would immediately notice his altered behavior, no intimate partner to question the subtle shifts in mannerism or personality. Bad, because it left him utterly alone in this bewildering new existence, with no confidant to help him understand what had happened or navigate the labyrinthine complexities of Fiona's life. The computer, once he dared to access it, provided even more information. Fiona's browsing history showed interests in high fashion, luxury travel, and, surprisingly, fitness. While she certainly wasn't a gym rat like he had been, her regular access to yoga and Pilates videos, along with a subscription to several clean-eating blogs, explained the toned but not overtly muscular physique he now inhabited. It was a body shaped by discipline, but a different kind of discipline than his own, one focused on flexibility, grace, and inner strength rather than brute force and size. By the end of the first week, Damian had established some basic, unsettling facts. He was, to all appearances, irrevocably trapped in Fiona's body, with no obvious way back to his own. No one had reported Damian Clark missing, suggesting that someone, likely Fiona herself, was now inhabiting his body, living his life. And most importantly, he needed to adapt to this new reality, at least temporarily. Survival, he knew from his years of physical training, often came down to adaptation. He began trying on more of Fiona's clothes, not just out of curiosity, but as a crucial step in acclimatizing himself. It was a bizarre, almost theatrical process of self-discovery. He found himself, much to his surprise, enjoying the sheer variety and aesthetic pleasure of it all, a stark contrast to his former wardrobe of functional gym clothes and basic men's wear. A sleek black cocktail dress, he discovered, perfectly accentuated his new waist and hips, creating an hourglass silhouette that was undeniably appealing. Designer jeans, soft and perfectly tailored, hugged curves he was still getting used to having, making his legs look impossibly long. Even lingerie, once he figured out how to put it on properly, created a silhouette that was undeniably appealing, a tantalizing glimpse of a completely new self. The lingerie experience was particularly eye-opening. Opening Fiona's underwear drawer revealed an organized collection of matching sets in various colors and styles, each piece a delicate confection of lace, silk, and intricate embroidery. After some initial hesitation, a residual male awkwardness about such intimate attire, he tried on a black lace set that looked relatively straightforward. Looking at himself in the mirror was surreal. The stark contrast of the dark, delicate fabric against pale skin, the way it highlighted every curve, every subtle swell. For the first time, he felt a genuine, unburdened appreciation for this body, separate from the initial shock and horror of the transformation. It was a beautiful form, undeniably. He tried on outfit after outfit, experimenting with different combinations, gradually gaining confidence in how to dress this new form, how to move within its confines. High heels, initially a terrifying challenge, felt like walking on stilts. He wobbled precariously at first, almost twisting an ankle, but with persistent practice, pacing back and forth across the penthouse's polished floors, he slowly improved. Makeup was even more daunting. The vast array of brushes, palettes, and tubes seemed to defy logic, but with the aid of countless YouTube tutorials, patiently pausing and replaying, he slowly began to master the basics: foundation, eyeliner, mascara, a touch of lip gloss. It was a painstaking, often frustrating process, but with each successful application, a tiny spark of something new ignited within him, a burgeoning sense of mastery, a strange, emerging feminine confidence. After nearly 2 weeks of self-imposed isolation within the golden cage of Fiona's apartment, Damian, the former gym bro, was getting restless. His former life had revolved around physical activity, the constant push and pull of weights, the exhilarating burn of cardio. This sedentary existence, however luxurious, was making him anxious, his muscles, however altered, craving movement. He decided to try working out in this new body. The apartment building, as expected, had a private, state-of-the-art gym, so he didn't have to venture far. The experience was humbling. Weights he'd once used for warm-ups were now impossibly heavy, his new, slender arms barely able to lift them. His endurance, once legendary amongst his clients, was a mere fraction of what it had been. Every movement felt different, every muscle responded in a new, unfamiliar way. But there was something freeing about starting fresh, about approaching fitness from a completely different physical perspective, without the weight of past achievements or expectations. He had to relearn everything. The machines he'd once used automatically now required careful adjustment for his smaller frame, the ergonomics entirely different. Free weights that he'd once tossed around casually now required real effort, each rep a conscious, deliberate struggle. Even basic exercises like push-ups and squats felt different, demanding new balances and engagements of muscles, all due to this body's altered proportions and shifted center of gravity. By the end of the workout, he was sweating, pleasantly tired, and surprisingly exhilarated. A familiar feeling, the satisfying ache of worked muscles, but in an utterly unfamiliar package. His muscles, smaller but still responsive, had that satisfying post-workout burn of a reassuring signal of life. He caught himself smiling in the mirror, a genuine, unforced smile. Some things, he realized, translated across the gender divide after all. The fundamental satisfaction of physical exertion, the mental clarity it brought, remained. That night, lying in the impossibly soft king-sized bed, the unfamiliar scent of vanilla and jasmine now a subtle presence he was beginning to associate with himself, Damian couldn't stop thinking about the other changes in this body. Specifically, the ones he'd been consciously, almost fearfully, avoiding exploring. The gym workout had opened a door, a subtle shift in his mental landscape, suggesting that if he was truly to inhabit this body, to understand this new existence, he needed to explore it fully, intimately. Curiosity, that most potent of human drives, finally overcame his lingering hesitation and ingrained male awkwardness. If he was truly stuck here, he reasoned with a strange, clinical detachment, then he should at least understand how everything worked. He didn't want to be graphic, a legacy of his former male sensibilities and the need to maintain a certain decorum even in his own thoughts. So, he would use fitness language, a framework he understood, a way to compartmentalize and analyze these bewildering new sensations. But the reader, he hoped, would know what he meant, right? This was an exploration, a training session of a different kind, a journey into the uncharted internal landscape of female pleasure. He began with what he mentally termed basic dynamic stretching, warming up the major muscle groups with gentle, exploratory massage. His own hands, still feeling foreign yet increasingly familiar, moved tentatively to the upper body training zone, his breasts. He discovered that circular motions around the pectoral region, particularly around the sensitive nodes he'd noticed in the shower, created surprisingly pleasant sensations that radiated outwards, spreading across his chest. The response indicators at the center of these muscle groups were particularly sensitive, sending unexpected signals, little jolts of warmth and tingling, when stimulated. The sensations were unlike anything he had experienced before as a man, more diffuse, somehow, spreading across his chest rather than concentrating in one singular point, a wave rather than a sharp peak. He experimented with different pressures and patterns, finding that light, gentle circular movements around the peak sensors created the most intense, lingering responses, a subtle hum of pleasure that deepened with each pass of his fingers. Moving to core conditioning, his hands ventured lower, to the lower abdominal area, where he found that sustained, gentle attention produced increasingly positive feedback. It was a subtle buildup, a slow, simmering heat that gathered force as he continued his exploration. When his fingers finally, tentatively, located the primary control node, the resulting training session was unlike anything in his previous experiences as a man. The sheer, overwhelming sensitivity, the immediate and profound response of his entire lower body was staggering. He tested various tempos and pressures, discovering that this body responded best to sustained, rhythmic movements rather than the more direct, forceful approach he was accustomed to. It was a dance of subtlety, of building anticipation rather than immediately seeking climax. The intensity built gradually, a slow, insistent crescendo, his internal muscles contracting involuntarily as he approached peak training efficiency. He felt a tightening deep within him, a delicious tension that spread through his core and radiated outwards. When the full body conditioning finally reached maximum output, the sensation was overwhelming, a cataclysmic release. Waves of pleasure washed through him, leaving him gasping for air, trembling uncontrollably, his muscles spasming with an exquisite, unfamiliar delight. The peak itself was nothing like what he'd experienced as a male. Instead of a focused, intense release followed by immediate relaxation, this was a rolling series of contractions that seemed to involve his entire lower body, reverberating deep within him, spreading through his hips and thighs. Waves of pleasure that peaked and receded, and then peaked again and again, before slowly, exquisitely subsiding. It was prolonged, multifaceted, and utterly, profoundly unlike anything he had ever known. After recovering, lying back against the pillows, his body still humming with the aftershocks of pleasure, he was surprised to find that this body didn't require the same cool-down period he was used to. There was no immediate sense of depletion, no overwhelming desire for sleep. Within minutes, the subtle thrum of arousal began to return, and he realized, with a jolt of astonished revelation, that he was ready for another training session. This one, he found, was even more intense than the first, the pathways of pleasure already primed, the body more responsive, more eager. Female pleasure, he was discovering, operated on completely different principles than male. It was more whole body, more diffuse, more wave-like, more prolonged, and capable of multiple peaks. And, he admitted to himself, his cheeks flushed with a mix of embarrassment and exhilarating discovery, he definitely wanted to explore it further. This was a whole new dimension of physical existence, a secret garden he was only just beginning to map. The previous 2 weeks of quiet exploration had been informative, but this intimate, internal journey was truly transformative. It chipped away at the last vestiges of his male identity, forcing him to embrace the sensations and realities of Fiona's body with an urgency he hadn't known was possible. Over the next few weeks, Damian continued his solo training regimen. He approached it with the same disciplined focus he once applied to lifting weights, a methodical exploration of his new anatomy. He became more skilled with each session, learning the intricate responses of his body, understanding its rhythms and preferences. He discovered various techniques and target areas that produced different types of responses, different qualities of pleasure. Some nights he would focus on endurance training, gradually building the intensity, prolonging the experience. Other nights, he'd engage in high-intensity interval work, seeking multiple, rapid-fire peaks. His new body proved remarkably responsive to consistent practice, growing more sensitive, more adept at achieving profound pleasure with each passing day. He found that combining different training approaches, simultaneously paying attention to multiple muscle groups, the chest, the core control center, created compound effects that amplified the overall experience, leading to richer, deeper, more encompassing sensations. The physical pleasure was incredible, almost overwhelming at times, but equally fascinating was how it differed from his experiences as a male. There was a depth and complexity to female arousal that he'd never understood before, a nuanced tapestry of sensation that went far beyond the simple, singular release he had always known. It was a lesson in sensuality, a re-education of his entire nervous system. But eventually, a new thought began to surface, a natural progression of his solo explorations. What would training with someone else feel like? What would intimate contact with another person feel like in this body? The thought was both terrifying and exciting, a thrilling prospect that sent shivers down his spine. The solitude, however luxurious, was beginning to feel stifling. He needed to test these new boundaries, to engage with the world and with others in this new form. He needed a partner, a guide, someone to help him navigate this even more complex terrain. After a month in Fiona's body, a full lunar cycle since his reality had irrevocably shattered and reformed, Damian felt a nascent confidence bloom within him. The initial shock had mellowed into a determined acceptance, the raw fear transformed into a curious resolve. He was no longer just a man trapped in a woman's body. He was becoming Fiona, learning her rhythms, understanding her world, and, most surprisingly, beginning to find a strange, unsettling comfort in it. The solitude of the penthouse, once a sanctuary, now felt like a gilded cage. He was restless, craving interaction, a testing of the waters in this new social ocean. He found a club listed in Fiona's phone, prominently marked in her favorite locations, a place called Azure. The photos associated with it showed pulsating lights, beautiful people, and an air of exclusivity. It seemed like the perfect, anonymous proving ground, a place where he could observe and assimilate without too much scrutiny. He decided to go. The process of getting ready was no longer a frantic, clumsy ordeal, but a deliberate, almost ritualistic transformation. He spent hours, meticulously doing his hair and makeup, now relying on muscle memory gained from countless YouTube tutorials and painstaking practice sessions. He selected a form-fitting, iridescent blue dress from Fiona's vast wardrobe, a piece that shimmered subtly with his movements and undeniably highlighted his new assets, the curves of his waist, the swell of his hips, the gentle lift of his breasts. He chose a pair of sleek, silver high heels, still a challenge, but one he was increasingly mastering. Looking in the mirror before leaving, he barely recognized the person staring back. It wasn't just the body swap, though that was still a profound, ever-present reality. It was him, yet also not him. It was Fiona, but Fiona infused with a new, quiet determination. He had adapted, molded himself to her form, learned to present as female with a skill that genuinely surprised him. The dress hugged his curves perfectly, a second skin of shimmering confidence. His makeup enhanced his features without looking overdone, subtly bringing out the color of his eyes, defining his lips. And he'd managed to style his hair in loose, elegant waves that framed his face, softening the intensity in his gaze. He looked good. More than good. He looked like he belonged in this body, in this outfit, ready for the night. The journey to Azure was in a sleek, self-driving car he summoned with Fiona's phone, another luxury he was still getting used to. The club itself was everything the photos promised, exclusive, with a velvet rope and a long line snaking around the block. But as he approached, the formidable bouncer, a hulking figure with an earpiece, nodded him through immediately, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Clearly, Fiona was a regular, her presence an unspoken privilege. Inside was a sensory overload. Pulsing music, a deep, throbbing bass that vibrated through the floorboards and up his new spine, filled the vast space. Flashing lights, a kaleidoscope of colors, cut through the smoky haze. Beautiful people, dressed in various states of fashionable undress, moved in rhythmic unison on the dance floor, their bodies a blur of motion. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, spilled cocktails, and the faint, sweet tang of something illicit. He ordered a sophisticated-looking cocktail from the impossibly chic bar and found a quiet corner, observing, trying to understand how Fiona would behave in this environment. He watched the subtle dance of attraction, the flirtatious glances, the confident swagger of both men and women. Men approached consistently, drawn by Fiona's undeniable beauty, offering drinks and dance invitations. He politely declined, a small, apologetic smile on his lips, not yet comfortable with male attention in this form. There was a residual apprehension, a discomfort with the male gaze now directed at him, a perspective he had never considered from the other side. Instead, he found himself watching the women, how they moved with an innate grace, how they interacted with each other, their easy laughter, their knowing glances, how confidently they seemed to inhabit their bodies, owning their sensuality. It was a fascinating study, a new lens through which to view an entire gender he had previously taken for granted. One woman in particular caught his eye. Tall, athletically built, with short, stylishly cropped blonde hair and a confident, almost assertive posture that reminded him, strangely, a bit of his former self, the unshakable self-assurance of a disciplined athlete. She was laughing with a group of friends, her head thrown back, a genuine, infectious sound. When she caught him looking and smiled, a direct, engaging smile that reached her eyes, Damian felt a flutter of interest in his new chest, a warmth spreading through him that took him completely by surprise. It wasn't just aesthetic appreciation, it was something more, a nascent desire. She detached herself from her group and made her way over, moving with an effortless grace that belied her athletic build. "Hi," she said, her voice a low, pleasant alto, her eyes sparkling. "I'm Elsa." Damian, for a moment, forgot his carefully constructed persona, almost stumbling over his own name, or rather, Fiona's. "Fiona," he managed, offering a hand, which she took in a firm, warm grip. Their conversation flowed easily, surprisingly so. Elsa was smart, witty, and possessed a dry, engaging sense of humor that made him laugh freely for the first time in weeks. She was also, he realized, increasingly flirtatious, her gaze lingering on his face, her hand occasionally brushing his arm as she spoke. There was a palpable spark between them, an undeniable chemistry that both thrilled and terrified him. When she asked, her eyes crinkling at the corners, if he wanted to leave with her, Damian found himself saying yes without hesitation, a giddy thrill coursing through his veins. The thought of intimate contact, of exploring this body with another, had moved from abstract curiosity to imminent reality. Back at Elsa's apartment, a cozy, artfully cluttered space filled with books, musical instruments, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee, any lingering nervousness gave way to a potent cocktail of curiosity and anticipation. Elsa moved with an easy grace, offering him a glass of wine, her movements confident and unhurried. The soft lighting in her living room, the quiet hum of the city outside, created an intimate atmosphere, a stark contrast to the pulsating energy of the club. Damian found himself surprisingly at ease, drawn in by her calm demeanor and the genuine warmth in her eyes. What followed, he mentally categorized as an intensive partner training session, a phrase that brought a faint, nervous smile to his lips. It was an exploration that pushed the boundaries of his new body's capabilities, an intimate dance guided by Elsa's intuitive expertise. Elsa began with what felt like a comprehensive, warm-up routine, her hands expertly, gently, navigating his responsive zones. They were on her comfortable, worn sofa, the wine long forgotten. "You seem a little tense," she murmured, her voice a low, soothing balm, her fingers finding subtle knots in muscles he didn't even know he had, tracing pathways of sensation he was only just beginning to understand. "Let me help you stretch those tight muscles." Her approach was methodical yet exquisitely intuitive. She started with a light, upper body circuit training, her touch feather-light at first, tracing the delicate skin of his shoulders and neck, sending shivers through him. Her touch deepened, moving to his chest, circling the sensitive nodes he had discovered in his solo explorations. But with her touch, the sensations were magnified, amplified, radiating outwards with an intensity that took his breath away. Her mouth and hands seemed to work in tandem, a symphony of touch and gentle kisses, maximizing the response from his primary muscle groups, creating sensations far more intense, more profound than his solo workouts had ever achieved. She seemed to instinctively understand the female body's training needs, its delicate architecture of pleasure in ways he, even after weeks of focused self-exploration, was still learning. Where his solo explorations had been somewhat experimental and clumsy, a fumbling through uncharted territory, Elsa's techniques were refined, almost surgical in their precision, honed by experience and empathy. She knew exactly how much pressure to apply, when to accelerate and when to slow down, how to build intensity gradually rather than rushing, creating a delicious, almost unbearable anticipation. She moved lower, her hands tracing the curve of his back, the swell of his hips, her touch igniting new sensations, new areas of response he hadn't yet discovered. When she finally focused her attention on his core control center, the resulting muscle response was immediate and overwhelming. A gasp escaped his lips, his body arching instinctively into her touch. Her precise, targeting techniques triggered multiple consecutive training peaks, each one more intense, more profound than the last. The world narrowed to the exquisite pressure of her touch, the rhythmic cadence of his own breathing, and the escalating waves of pleasure. "That's it," she encouraged, her voice a soft whisper against his ear, her breath warm against his skin, as he gasped beneath her expert instruction. "Let your body find its natural rhythm. Let go." He did. The waves of pleasure under her guidance were even more intense, more consuming than anything he had achieved alone. Each peak seemed higher than the last, building to a crescendo that left him breathless, trembling, his entire body alight with sensation. The rolling contractions he had discovered on his own were now amplified, a full-body tremor that left him utterly spent, yet craving more. By the time their extended session concluded, he had experienced multiple performance breakthroughs and was pleasantly exhausted in ways he'd never imagined possible, a deep, pervasive satisfaction settling into his bones. As they lay catching their breath, tangled in her soft, rumpled sheets, the only sounds the distant city hum and their own ragged breathing, Damian marveled at the profound difference between this experience and his previous male encounters. With women, in his former life, he'd always been the one in control, the one responsible for their pleasure, his focus on performance, on achieving a specific outcome. Now he was on the receiving end, surrendering to another's touch, and the vulnerability was both terrifying and exhilarating. There was something profoundly liberating about surrendering to another person's expertise, about letting himself be guided through uncharted territory, trusting in their touch and their intuition. It was a complete reversal of roles, and one he found himself embracing with surprising eagerness. Elsa, sensing his quiet contemplation, traced lazy patterns on his skin with her fingertips. "You're different," she said softly, her voice husky with post-intimacy warmth. "Most women I've been with know exactly what they like, have their routines, their preferences. You're experiencing everything like it was the first time." If she only knew how right she was. The irony was almost overwhelming. "I guess I'm still figuring things out," Damian replied carefully, choosing his words with deliberate vagueness, a half-truth that concealed the monumental secret of his existence. She smiled, a genuine, warm smile that lit up her eyes. "Well," she murmured, leaning in to kiss his forehead, "I'd be happy to help with that process anytime." He left Elsa's apartment later that morning, with her number carefully stored in Fiona's phone, and a newfound appreciation for this body's capabilities, a deeper understanding of its incredible capacity for pleasure. The experience had been eye-opening in more ways than one. Not only had he discovered new dimensions of physical pleasure, sensations far richer and more complex than he had ever conceived as a man, but he'd also experienced the unique dynamic of female-female intimacy. The gentleness, the mutual understanding, the shared vulnerability, the absence of the performance pressure he'd always felt as a man. It was a revelation, a complete redefinition of what intimacy could be. He felt a profound shift within him, a softening of his rigid, masculine worldview. Over the following months, the initial shock and disorienting novelty of his situation slowly gave way to a profound, almost peaceful acceptance. Damian, now fully inhabiting the persona of Fiona Reynolds, continued exploring this new life with a blend of scientific curiosity and burgeoning enjoyment. The boundaries between his past self and his present self blurred with each passing day, each new experience. His workout routine underwent a complete transformation. Gone was the relentless pursuit of raw strength and massive size that had defined his former life. Instead, Fiona's physique, already toned from yoga and Pilates, became the focus of a new kind of discipline. He developed a routine suited to his female body, prioritizing flexibility, core strength, and endurance. He found a new appreciation for the subtle power of Pilates, the graceful flow of vinyasa yoga, and the invigorating burn of high-intensity cardio that left his muscles lengthened and lean, rather than bulky. He discovered the satisfaction of a strong, flexible body that moved with ease and grace, a different kind of power than he had once sought, but no less potent. The gym, once a place of competitive grunting and heavy lifting, transformed into a sanctuary for mindful movement and internal connection. He also learned to navigate Fiona's complex social circles. Her acquaintances, a dazzling array of socialites, artists, and entrepreneurs, had initially seemed intimidating. But with careful observation and a quick study of Fiona's social media interactions, he learned the subtle cues, the unwritten rules of their world. He mastered the art of polite small talk, the casual air of sophisticated indifference, the knack for appearing effortlessly charming. He attended exclusive parties, charity galas, and fashion events, observing, learning, and gradually participating. He found that his genuine curiosity, perhaps a lingering trait from his former intellectual self, made him a surprisingly engaging conversationalist, more attentive and less superficial than some of Fiona's usual crowd. Managing Fiona's vast finances, once a source of overwhelming anxiety, became a new challenge he embraced with surprising aptitude. His disciplined, analytical mind, honed by years of precise meal planning and workout routines, proved well-suited to understanding investment portfolios and property management statements. He spent hours in Fiona's home office, poring over documents, consulting with financial advisors, who, surprisingly, seemed to appreciate his newfound engagement and learning the intricacies of wealth management. It was a stark contrast to his former life, where budgeting for protein powder and gym membership fees was the extent of his financial concerns. He learned to enjoy the privileges her wealth afforded, the freedom from financial worry, the ability to indulge in exquisite experiences, the power to make choices unfettered by monetary constraints. He occasionally went back to the club, Azure, drawn by the vibrant energy and the lingering memory of Elsa. Sometimes he'd meet Elsa there, their connection a comfortable, exhilarating familiarity. Sometimes he'd connect with other women, exploring the varied landscape of female intimacy. Each new partner brought different techniques, different approaches to pleasure, further deepening his understanding of the female body's incredible capacity for sensation. He found, unequivocally, that he preferred the female approach to physical training, more attentive, more focused on the journey of arousal rather than simply the destination of climax, a patient unfolding of sensation rather than a headlong rush. It was a more holistic, more deeply satisfying experience. His appreciation for women's experiences deepened exponentially as he lived them firsthand. The constant, subtle awareness of safety in public spaces, a concern that had never truly crossed his mind as a man, became a daily reality. He noticed the casual objectification by men, the lingering stares, the unsolicited comments, the assumption of availability, and felt a surge of indignation on behalf of women everywhere. The expectation to always look put together, the pressure to conform to beauty standards, the meticulous rituals of hair, makeup, and fashion, things he had once dismissed as frivolous, now became an integral part of his daily existence, a subtle yet persistent demand on his time and energy. He also navigated the complex social dynamics among female friend groups, the unspoken alliances, the subtle rivalries, the intricate web of emotional connections. Things he'd never noticed or understood before were now his daily reality. It was a profound education in empathy, a complete shift in perspective. 6 months after the mysterious swap, Damian stood in front of Fiona's mirror, his mirror now, and hardly recognized the person he used to be. The muscular gym rat, the man whose identity was so tightly bound to his physical prowess, was a distant memory. In his place stood a confident woman, poised and self-possessed, who knew exactly how to move in her body, how to dress it, how to please it. Her hair, now expertly styled, framed a face that held a quiet strength and a newfound serenity. Her eyes, once wide with panic, now held a deep, knowing calm. He still didn't understand how or why this had happened. The mystery of the body swap remained unsolved, a fundamental enigma at the heart of his new existence. He occasionally searched online for information about his old life, typing Damian Clark personal trainer into the search bar, but found nothing useful beyond his old professional social media accounts, frozen in time. It seemed Damian Clark was continuing to exist, just with someone else at the controls, his life ostensibly continuing without interruption. But the longer he lived as Fiona, the less urgently he needed answers. The initial frantic desperation to return to his old life had receded, replaced by a quiet sense of belonging and unexpected contentment. If someone offered him a way back tomorrow, a magical portal that would return him to his male body, his old apartment, his old life, would he take it? 6 months ago, the answer would have been an immediate, unequivocal yes, a desperate scramble to reclaim his former identity. Now, he wasn't so sure. The question hung in the air, unanswered, a testament to the profound transformation he had undergone. This body, this life, they were undeniably his now. And surprisingly, exhilaratingly, he was okay with that. More than okay. He was thriving. Sometimes, he mused, a faint smile playing on his lips, the most effective transformation doesn't happen in the gym after all. It happens in the heart, in the mind, in the unexpected journey of becoming someone entirely new. The 6-month mark wasn't an ending, but rather a new beginning, a threshold crossed into a future that was, for the first time, truly open and unscripted. The urgency to find answers about the body swap had faded into a quiet, background hum, replaced by a more immediate and compelling drive to fully inhabit and shape Fiona's life, which was now, undeniably, his life. The past, Damian's past, became less a yearning and more a distant, curious memory, like a story read long ago. He continued his physical regimen, no longer viewing it as a means to an end, but as an act of self-care and empowerment. His yoga and Pilates practice deepened, transforming his body into a vessel of strength and grace. He discovered the joys of dance, enrolling in a contemporary class that challenged his coordination and opened up new avenues of self-expression. His movements became fluid, confident, a stark contrast to the rigid, utilitarian way he had once carried his male body. He still found immense satisfaction in the physical, but it was a nuanced, internal satisfaction, rooted in feeling good, strong, and centered, rather than simply looking strong. Fiona's vast wealth, once a bewildering abstraction, became a tool for positive change. He found himself drawn to philanthropic endeavors, especially those supporting women's health and education. He started volunteering at a local women's shelter, experiencing firsthand the struggles and resilience of women from all walks of life. This direct engagement with the wider world, a world beyond the gilded cage of Fiona's penthouse and exclusive clubs, grounded him in a way his former life never had. He learned humility, empathy, and the quiet satisfaction of contributing to something larger than himself. The superficiality of some of Fiona's social circle began to chafe, and he found himself gravitating towards individuals with more substance, more depth, people who valued genuine connection over status. His relationship with Elsa deepened, evolving into something beautiful and complex. She became his confidant, his anchor, the one person he felt truly saw him, even if she didn't know the full extent of his secret. Their intimacy continued to be a profound journey of discovery, each encounter revealing new layers of connection and pleasure. He found in her a genuine understanding, a shared laughter, and a profound sense of mutual respect that transcended gender or physical form. He learned to trust her, to open up about his vulnerabilities, something he had rarely allowed himself as Damian Clark. He often wondered what she would say, how she would react, if she knew the truth, but for now, the secret remained his alone, a heavy but necessary burden. One evening, as they lay intertwined after an particularly intense training session, Elsa gently traced the scar above his left eyebrow, a faint, almost invisible mark he'd gotten years ago from a rogue barbell. "This little warrior mark," she murmured. "It tells a story, doesn't it?" Damian felt a pang of longing, a sudden rush of memory for his old life, but it was quickly superseded by the warmth of her touch, the genuine affection in her voice. "Every mark does," he replied, a subtle, knowing smile playing on his lips. "Every single one." He realized then that the physical marks of Damian Clark were now part of Fiona Reynolds, integrated into her story, his story. His past life, the persona of Damian Clark, remained a shadow, a ghost that occasionally flickered in the periphery. He sometimes saw photos of his old gym online, new trainers smiling confidently, clients still striving for their fitness goals. He even stumbled upon a social media profile for Damian Clark, updated with new pictures, new posts. Clearly, someone was still living that life, maintaining that online presence. He saw a man, smiling, muscular, looking remarkably like him, but with an almost imperceptible shift in his eyes, a subtle difference in his posture. He often wondered if Fiona, wherever she was as content in his old body as he was becoming in hers. He hoped she was. He hoped she was discovering new strengths, new joys, just as he had. The ultimate question of why, or how the swap occurred remained unanswered, a tantalizing mystery that he had, by necessity, learned to live with. Perhaps it was a cosmic joke, a karmic rebalancing, or simply an inexplicable phenomenon of the universe. What mattered now was the present, the unfolding future he was actively creating. Life as Fiona Reynolds was no longer a disguise or a temporary assignment. It was simply life. He had found purpose beyond the superficiality, connection beyond the transient, and pleasure beyond the purely physical. He had cultivated a deep appreciation for the female experience, an empathy born of immersion, not just observation. He had learned the strength in vulnerability, the power in intuition, the richness of emotional connection. Standing before his mirror now, a year after the swap, he saw Fiona Reynolds. But he also saw the echoes of Damian Clark, subtly integrated, woven into the fabric of this new self. The discipline, the drive, the analytical mind, the quiet strength, they were still there, transformed and recontextualized. He had not just swapped bodies, he had transcended, evolved. The thought of going back, if a way ever presented itself, no longer held the same desperate pull. The identity of Damian Clark felt like a well-worn coat he had outgrown, a familiar but now ill-fitting garment. Fiona Reynolds, however, felt like a bespoke suit, perfectly tailored, allowing him to move with unprecedented freedom and confidence. This body, this life, this identity, they were his. And he was truly, finally, okay with that. More than okay. He was ready for whatever came next, a woman of strength, grace, and an unexpected, beautiful future.